Hello and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk, a musician from New York, an Ableton certified trainer. I have my own website called brianfunk.com where you can get tutorials, Ableton live packs, find this podcast, and so much more. Please check it out, brianfunk.com. Today's episode is about writer's block, this strange phenomenon that happens to so many of us and prevents us from getting work done, like a curse from some evil magician warlord somewhere that doesn't want you to make cool music. But here's the thing. You don't have writer's block. None of us do. The thing is, you're worrying too much about what it's going to come out like. You're worrying about the results. You have this perfect empty session open, brand new, untitled project. What is it going to be? It's clean, it's perfect, it's untouched. You can only ruin it. This is what you're telling yourself. The first things you try to put down, they don't sound like the hits that you love and adore, so you delete it. And then you try something else and you delete that. Then you start searching for plugins and loops and stuff and nothing seems good enough. You just can't do it. You think you have writer's block, but you don't. It's your mind. It's getting in the way. You're worrying too much. The trick here is we have to focus on the process, not the outcome. You have to just go. Don't worry about it. And be okay with being silly. I think a lot of us get all caught up in this idea of being an artist, capital A, artist, right? Where we got to make these great works and change the world and have an impact on people and make a real interesting statement. Don't worry about that. Be okay with being silly. Be okay with being bad. Do you like your taste in music? I bet you do. That's why it's your taste in music. How about trusting yourself that these early ideas you're coming up with might be able to be turned into something that fits into your taste of music? Maybe you'll be able to apply your taste to it and make it into something interesting. You really can't enjoy the process if you're worried about it the whole time. Try this mental exercise. Does your life have meaning? Are you making the most of your time? When you're on your deathbed, will you be glad you spent this time in your preciously short life listening to me on the Music Production Podcast telling you about writer's block? Are you using your time the best possible way? Even just saying these things is making me nervous. When you start to ask these questions, it builds up anxiety, it builds up worry, and it builds up doubt about what you're doing. You're no longer really doing the thing you're doing. You're thinking about it. You're distracted. You aren't paying attention to the thing you're actually doing. You're paying attention to whether or not what you're doing is any good, if it's meaningful, if it's worthwhile, and you might be paying attention to all of the other things you could be doing instead. I think if you pay close enough attention to anything, it's pretty interesting. Everything in the world has people that are fascinated by it. Even the most strange, obscure things that might mean nothing to you in your life are fascinating to certain people. And there's a lot of people in the world that don't give any kind of care in the world towards music production or music even. It doesn't mean anything to them. But I think if you pay attention to things deep enough, you find that they are kind of interesting. I think we get bored and uninterested when we start thinking about the other things we could be doing instead of the thing we're doing. But focused attention on something makes things interesting. Think about ants in the dirt, little insects. You just walk past them every day, but think about their complex civilizations that they have, their roles, the workers, the queen, the way they interact and cooperate. It's incredible if you really get down there and pay attention to them. But if you're thinking about other things you'd rather be doing, it's kind of boring because you'd rather be doing something else. This is kind of what happens to us, I think, when we're doing music production, when we're creating art or anything really, and we are distracted by the questions of whether or not what we're doing is worthwhile or any good. We aren't focused on the actual work that we're doing. We're focused on the results and we're judging things too early. We have to focus on the process of making music. And even making a bad song is good for the process. The process is how we get things done. So if you're making a bad song and you're following through with it, you're getting the practice at making a song. So what if it came out bad? Just try to do it with heart. If you are recording a band, let's say you're producing a band and you hate the music, you could think about how terrible the music is and pay attention to how much you wish you were working with some other group that was better, that was more to your style. Or you could focus on the craft and you can try to make it as good as possible. And you can look at this as an opportunity to just exercise those muscles of making music, recording music, and producing a band. And that will be a much more enjoyable experience than being distracted by the thought of you should be doing something else. You should be working with something else. And if you are in the focusing on the process and enjoying the act of it, you might actually make it better. We really have to save the judgmental part of our music making for later. It's important to be judgmental and be critical of your work, but not in the early stages. In the early stages, your ideas are just too young and fresh and precious. They're baby ideas. You can't unfairly criticize them for what they are. And if you do, you're going to start thinking about all of the other music you love and the great artists there are in some of your favorite songs that may have been fully produced by teams of the world's greatest experts in each one of their specific jobs, the best producers, engineers, singers, vocalists, whatever it is. They're all the best coming together to make this amazing song. And you're comparing the thing that you spent 5 minutes putting together to that. And that's not fair. That's like taking a little child, showing them how to throw a ball and being disappointed in them that they're not as good as one of the best baseball players in the world. That's just an unfair comparison. You need to give the idea some time to grow and develop and to work on that. We have to kill the critic. It cannot be around in this creative stage of the process because really there's nothing to be critical of yet. You have nothing to edit. You haven't made anything yet. I think what happens when we have writer's block is we haven't just made anything. If you think you have writer's block, then show me the bad music you've made. Let's hear all your bad ideas. Do you have any? Or are they all just things you started and abandoned? I'm guessing that you probably have things you've started and abandoned. I know I do. That's when I have writer's block, it's all things that I start and abandon. It's not I've finished a whole track and I'm like, oh, this is terrible. And I finished this whole track, even though I didn't have the inspiration or whatever. I didn't go through the process. And I stopped short and then got in my head and started thinking about the bad things I'm doing and how I'm not making an impact on the world with this. And I've lost my edge or whatever I want to start thinking in my head. That's what's really going on. It's likely you probably don't have a lot of bad music to show. We have to let the mind play a little. It's called playing music, so have fun with it. Just play, be silly, have fun. Don't worry about it. Just go full steam ahead and see if you can make something out of it. Let that be the challenge. There's some producers I know that actually challenge themselves by finding the dumbest sounds they can find and seeing if they can make something out of it. And I think that's a great idea because right away you're kind of just letting your guard down a little bit and you're not worrying about this stuff. And if you're able to turn a corner on say it's a sound or a loop or whatever you decide to choose that you think is ridiculously bad or stupid or silly or cheesy, and if you turn that corner and it starts getting interesting, that's going to really fire you up and you're going to get excited. Don't be afraid to play. This is why I like rough drafts or demos or little experiments because you're not really expecting anything great. And a lot of times these experiments and these just little things you're doing without any expectations start to become ideas you can actually spend your time working on. So there's no magical force. There's no writer's block. There's just this thing in your head that's getting in the way. It's all in your head. There's no age when your juices run out. There's no curse on you. There's nothing that you did that made it impossible for you to do this. It's just in your head. It's a story you're telling yourself. It's like you put on a movie and now you're watching the movie called You Can't Make Music. You are terrible at producing. You suck at producing. One of my favorite YouTube channels too, by the way. And I love how tongue-in-cheek it is too. It's kind of sarcastic the whole way through too, which makes it fun and takes some of the pressure off. Check out You Suck at Producing. I've had You Suck at Producing on the podcast. I'll put a link to that show too. But anyway, it's all in your head. This is a story you're telling yourself. You put that movie on. Try ejecting that movie from the mental DVD player or the mental Netflix stream and put something different on. Something called, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to enjoy the process. And I'm just going to use this to grow as a producer. And those kind of lowering the bar like that will give you the freedom to have fun, and it'll help prevent you from stepping out of the moment and thinking about what you're doing too much. I bet most of the best times in your life were times where time flew by. You weren't thinking to yourself, am I having fun? Is this a good use of my time? You were just lost in the moment. If you can be mindful enough to recognize when you're telling yourself these stories that you have writer's block, that you have this problem, try to snap out of it. Turn it off. And just make something. Don't worry about if it's good or bad. Just worry about the process of doing it. And I bet you'll be surprised that over time, you'll start coming up with stuff that you do actually like. And if it takes a little while to make something you like, at least you're growing your skills at being a producer. So, you don't have writer's block. It's all in your head. Have a great day.